Thank you, Natalie, for the introduction. Thank you, Scripps College, for having us. And thank you, Krista, for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you to my BFF in this WTF World, Yumi Sakugawa.
You're welcome.
I get a lot of questions about this purse, so I'll just ward them off and tell you. It's by my friend, artist Michelle Pred, and she's a Swedish-American artist. She does a lot of amazing feminist artwork. She has these riot shields with feminist sayings on them. They're really powerful, but they're also very playful, as you'll see. So here we go. And here we go. So she made this one for me. Okay.
Love the purse. And
by the way, I think a few of these might be at the Oscars. I hear rumors of that, but I got it first, so.
That's amazing. Speaking of public displays of art, oh my gosh, I mean, how does it feel to be the creator of this viral art movement that has graced the cover of Time magazine and has essentially become this visual shorthand for the feminist resistance?
Sometimes it feels unreal. Oh, I see a Pussyhat out there, thank you. But just like that, I see someone wear it just out in the crowd, and I feel an immediate connection. And I don't think one has to be the creator to feel that connection. I think, in a way, we all created this project, right? It's, I call it a DIY project I did not do myself, in that we all took part to make this mass collective statement at the march. And when we wear this hat out into the world, let me backtrack a second, actually. After the Women's March in DC, it was amazing to see everyone out there. And I had a huge, tangle in my hair, and so my hat did double duty on the airplane ride home. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna wear this hat loud and proud. And I sit down, I'm in the window seat, and this guy comes up and sits in the middle seat, and he's totally outfitted in Trump gear, just head to toe. I was like, really? And then my friend, she was seated back there, and she later told me, oh yeah, I was sitting next to this really nice girl. She has a podcast. She loves the pussy. I'm like, what? How come I get the Trump supporter? And we had a really interesting conversation, and I later found out his mom was across the aisle and taking these not so covert pictures of us. She just thought it was hilarious because he has his Trump cap on, I have my pussy hat on. And at one point, I get up to use the bathroom, and there's a little bit of a line. And there was a woman wearing a pussy hat, and she leans into me and she says, we've been looking out for you. I was like, wow, thank you. I just felt so because there was this kind of shiver of danger when he sat down, actually, and the idea that other women we're clocking this and we have eyes on you, nothing bad's gonna happen. I was like, oh my God, thanks, and this has nothing to do with oh, you're the creator of it, so we're gonna take care of you. It's no, you're one of us, So, and I do think that the hat says to people, I've got you, And so that, I think, first and foremost, I kind of experience the hat as others do, and if that's already so powerful. It is kind of fun to, reveal, to make a connection with someone over the hat and reveal, oh, I actually came up with the idea. They're like, what? No. And, the other day, someone's mother, and she must be, I don't know, in her 60s, no more, but anyway, she was like, I'll Jewish mother anybody, and she'll and when she found out I created, she was like, oh my God, I want to be you when I grow up. I'm like, oh my God, it's just, anyway, it's really fun.
I love that that's chronologically impossible, but the sentiment behind it is amazing. And speaking of generations and ages. I remember that you said several times that a lot of people who chose to participate in the Pussyhat projects, they learned it from their grandmothers, even though it's associated as this viral social media heavy movement. It actually came through in very analog ways.
Yeah, it really combined the analog, like working with your hands, with digital media and the power of spreading that. But I think it really moved people because we live in such a day of screens and clicks, you know? And, you know, I think it's important to donate to the people and organizations you feel really strongly about. But I think to receive a novel request of like, hey, can you knit a hat and give it away to someone? Or will you wear a hat? Will you write a note for it? I think really touched people in a more primal way. Because like I think social media and the internet is very now, it's of the future, and it's very powerful, but I don't think our animal selves have caught up to it. Whereas the hat is like, you are literally sheltering someone from the elements when you make a hat for someone. And I also think that like, there's something about making things with your hands that I know I lose touch with a lot. I'm a screenwriter, and I can go over the same screenplay over and over and over again and feel like I'm not getting anywhere. But I could pick up my knitting and see like, oh, I'm making progress, you know? And I think in politics especially, it can feel really disheartening to feel like you're not making progress. Like you could do all this work and it's just a drop in the ocean. But with the hat, you actually felt your progress and you saw your progress and you connected with other people doing the same thing. So yeah, I think knitting was huge. I also love that a lot of people told me, like these really like chic millennial women were like, oh my God, I heard about this project through my mom or my aunt or my grandmother. So it's like, this is a project that actually really came like from the people, like, you know, not just like the city left coast or something. Like I'm visiting Lovell, Maine next week because a lot of people there were involved in the project. And someone wrote on my Instagram, like, are you going to Lovell, Maine? Like, really? Like, it's a tiny, tiny town. My family has a cabin there. Like, it just blew his mind. But, I mean, that's where people are, and that's where people were taking part in the project. So I think it really reached big cities, small cities, old, young, in between. And I think that's what made the project really powerful, actually, that it wasn't just one segment of people.
And I think it's funny also that as the movement grew bigger and bigger, you were saying that you would see celebrities on Twitter be asking, hey, where do I get a pink pussy hat? Do I need to meet some dealer
In the parking
in some
lot?
Parking
Yeah,
lot? How do I get in on it?
Like, someone hook me up, please. And yeah, I think because I'm one of the women working in Hollywood, it's like people assume I reached out to like my celebrity contacts and got them to wear the hat, and then it was like a trickle down effect from there, and that's just not true. Like Yumi was saying, celebrities like had to find their own hats, like actually, like, you know, or knit their own, or a few of them did, like really Kristen Ritter did early on. And I think there was a real salt of the earth feeling about the project, you know, that even like with the press we got, it was really interesting as an artist because I've definitely like had that experience as an artist, like pitching people things and they don't really land. And this was like the opposite, where people, like the press really wanted to learn more about the project, actually. So I think it's not because like anything to do with me, but the fact that like women everywhere of all types were taking part, yeah.
And speaking of the press, I think I recall in your book, DIY Rules for a WTF World, which is a really wonderful book, by the way. And as one of Krista's close friends, I love seeing and reading advice you have personally given to me and our group of friends over the years, condensed in these wonderful Zen-like bite-sized advice pieces, which are all very profound and applicable.
It was in the Wall Street Journal today, I'm just saying.
Congratulations. I also wanted to bring up how when the Pussyhat Project, as it neared its debut at the Women's March, you were receiving criticisms from institutional publications saying that the Pussyhat Project, maybe it was the Washington Post that said, can you remind me what they said?
I think like the movement needs like action, not pink cat ear hats or something. Like we need real action. We need, it was something very specific. It was something along those lines, yeah. It was essentially saying it was like frivolous and undignified and yeah.
And what would your response be to critics who find these pink pussy hats undignified, frivolous, a frothy, insubstantial form of activism?
You know, first of all, what was amazing was that I found I didn't have to always speak up for it. It was actually like a lot of people spoke up after that, like really defending the project, you know, because they felt like it was their own, you know, and so I guess the lazy part of me was like, oh, I didn't even have to. That was great. But no, I mean, I actually think I think a lot of things. I think, you know, the Time's Up movement was criticized, for example, because it's like, oh, they're just ladies wearing black dresses. But, I mean, first of all, it's not true. They raised a ton of money. They pushed for policy change. But I think apathy is one of the greatest tools of patriarchy. I think they really gain something from us feeling isolated and like we can't make a difference. So, ergo, right? Like, oh, that little thing you're doing, don't do it. It doesn't make a difference, right? But I think that's really dangerous because I think, you know, one day it's like wearing a pink hat doesn't matter. Making a pink hat for another doesn't matter. And, you know, a few days later, it's like voting doesn't matter, you know? So I really think I try to lift the haze, and I talk about it in my book in the very first chapter because I think it's so important that, you know, patriarchy is like a haze. It is there, it's all around us, and you can't touch it, and you can't even see it, but it's there and it's obscuring your vision. So I think as a women's movement, we need to strive to lift the haze, and it's a very tricky enemy when you can't always touch or see it, you know? And I think a lot of artwork, like yours included, is about crystallizing that haze for even just a moment, so we like notice it and know we can do something about it and manipulate it to something else. So yeah, I do think that it's like a lot of the criticisms of the hat are actually insidious patriarchal thoughts, and a lot of us have become self-policing in that way, right? You know, in my book, I talk about how, like, when women like something, right, we call it a guilty pleasure. So we're not even like allowed to like things, right? And so of course the way we protest, the way we express ourselves, it's always like that's not quite right, hun, like, you know? Whereas, you know, when men like something, you know, Monday Night Football is not a guilty pleasure, right? So so I just want people to be really aware of that there is like that haze around the rituals and symbols of women, and that we have to be, first of all, aware of it, but also understanding that there's actually nothing wrong with loving what you love and expressing yourself the way you choose to see fit.
I know personally that as your friend, I learned so much about pleasure and desire, and I think I still do struggle with liking feminine things, being at home in my body, even as an author who has written extensively about mindfulness, meditation, self-care. It's still such an uphill battle to give myself that simple mental permission to slow down, to enjoy a life of ease, to not always be thinking about productivity and accomplishments and achievements. And what I also love about our friendship is that very serendipitously, even though we didn't know each other at that time, we went to the same pressure cooker high school in Orange County, a lot of Asian American overachievers. You had a perfect SAT score, you were on the pre-med path, and for me, similarly, I was also really hesitant to pursue a career in arts and publishing. And I know another thing that you bring up is that it took you 10 years to undo so much programming, whether it came from Asian American immigrant culture, patriarchy, the masculine capitalist culture at large. What were some of the things that 10 years later gave you permission to launch the Pussyhat Project when, say, as if you were a 20-year-old college student with the same idea, you would have talked yourself out of it?
Such a good question. A lot. I have 46 chapters in this book about it and it's 46 because it's my little nod and wink toward how I'm looking forward to the 46th president. I'm in the right crowd, thanks guys. The first chapter is called The Bellows, which, is a device almost like an accordion, and you can feed air into the fire and make the fire burn. And I compare that to inhaling and exhaling. And I think, so inhaling for me is when I'm just taking in, being curious, learning things, exploring, reading books, watching television, right? And all stuff that looks pretty like lazy on the outside, but it's a critical part of my creative process because it's the inhale. And if you don't inhale, you can't exhale. You can't exhale those projects, those pieces of art, the term paper, whatever it is, right? And I think for years, I tried to keep myself just in constant exhale mode. And whenever I was in an inhale mode, I would really punish myself. And that simple trick of understanding, no, sometimes I inhale and sometimes I exhale. And the more I push against it, actually, the less productive I am. And so just allowing to get to know my own rhythms was hugely helpful. I think in 2016, frankly, if I weren't inhaling all summer, I wouldn't have picked up knitting. It was like a dormant skill in me. My grandmother taught me when I was 6, but then I didn't really do much until 2016 in the summer. And did it make sense? No, I live in LA. It's cheaper to buy a sweater pre-made. But I just got so obsessed, and I was knitting all the time. And if that wasn't in my head, I wouldn't have been able to exhale the Pussyhat Project in November. So I don't know. I think what it comes down to, if I were to package it as advice, is that to really honor your own rhythms and trust in that and trust in yourself. So that was a key one. And I think getting to know myself and what I do best, like the longest chapter in this book is about how to get to know yourself. Because I didn't do this project alone. I called up friends. I kind of, did my whole Hollywood producer shtick of like, hey, like calling in favors, and also just getting people really excited about the project. And I think, that's another thing. I'm really introverted. So 10 years ago, I don't think I would have had the courage to ask people to help me and join me. And it took me a long time to, again, get to know myself and get comfortable with myself. So not only could I just be around myself, but I could befriend Yumi. And I think I want to go back to knowing yourself because that's so important. I think, especially when a woman gets to know herself, it's seen as selfish and like self-centered, narcissistic. And I think had I not done this very selfish work of getting to know myself, I wouldn't have been a good team member. I certainly wouldn't have been a good leader. And I think I'm finding now the hardest people to work with are the so-called selfless ones who have never gotten to know themselves. Because you come into a group bringing a lot of projection, and it comes out in ways that tend to tear the project apart, whatever the project might be. So it's something, I mean, in a way, this book is selfish because I would love it if more people got to know themselves. It would just make for a more fun work environment.
Another story that I've heard you relay several times, which I absolutely love, is how when you first told your family about the Pussyhat Project, your father said he was turned off by the word pussy. He wasn't sure if other people would sign on it. And of course, certainly, later, your family, they become your biggest supporters. And you say that had it happened 10 years ago, this criticism from your father would have crushed you and maybe even prevented you from going through with the project. So I wanted to ask you how, as an artist who has created this viral movement, which has sparked so many different responses, whether it's whatever.
I've been called a vile person by someone in Tennessee. That was a highlight.
Vile person.
Seriously, sometimes I feel like, I don't do enough. I'm just too tame. I remember someone out there thinks I'm vile and cutting edge. So
I was wondering, how do you navigate these different criticisms and responses? So, for example, there are responses from the trans community that the Pussyhat Project is trans exclusionary, gender essentialist. There are also criticisms from POC activists that the Pussyhat Project is racially exclusive. And as your friend, it's interesting for me to see on Twitter or Facebook people using the Pussyhat Project as this shorthand for white cisgender feminism, when I feel this visceral urge of wanting to tell people, wait, no, it was made by this Chinese, Korean American second generation artist. Don't erase Asian American women's role in this visual history. So how do you navigate all of these responses, and how do you move forward so that these criticisms, instead of stopping you completely, you're able to still move forward and continue to create more work?
Before I dive in, I do want to mention Yumi and I are actually a trio. We have an artist friend named Milk, M-I-L-C-K, and she sang a song called I Can't Keep Quiet, which went viral at the Women's March. And it was so interesting to me that she's Chinese American. She sang the unofficial anthem of the Women's March. And I'm Asian American, and I created the Pussyhat, like the visual emblem of the march. And we're both Asian American, and we both know each other. Like, we're both friends. Like, she knows which boys I like, and all. You know what I mean? And yet it's kind of lost in the story of how Asian Americans have affected the movement, particularly creatively. And I personally think there's like a link between how Asian Americans are told or taught to follow a very traditional role, and thus when an Asian American becomes an artist, it's like they've committed a deep betrayal to the people around them, and they have to deal with that. And I think that's actually the perfect breeding ground for being an activist, when you realize that you need to do something and people around you might not like it, So anyway, that's my little riff on that. And also, Milk's album is out. This is not the end. It came out the same week as my book. It was really special to share that with her. And with the criticism of the project, I think, I've had an array of responses that have just sort of grown and matured. I think ultimately, at first I sort of was just confused because, one, I'm a person of color, and from day zero, we had this manifesto on the website and with the pattern, that this project was welcoming, and we specifically had language in the manifesto about welcoming cisgender, transgender, we had that language. We also talked about how pussy it's not, it doesn't always refer to female genitalia, and I don't think participation in the Pussyhat Project demands that you have a vagina. I think for me, pussy is a derogatory term that we've reclaimed, and it's really about the feminine. And we all have the feminine in us. So when a man calls another man a pussy, he's not saying you have a vagina. He's saying, you're acting really feminine right now. And I think before we can make any real strides in gender equality, or even have a gender spectrum, the feminine needs to be respected again. I don't think it's respected now. And it's really needed. And secondly, the pink part of it, it was never meant to be a flesh tone thing. We talk about it, how pink is so associated with the feminine, and that's why we chose it, not because it was certainly not the color of my vulva, so and the thing is, I'm an art history major from Barnard College, another women's college, and a few hundred years ago, not that long ago, pink was not the female color, it was the male color. So the Virgin Mary is always in blue robes. And the idea was red was this powerful, bloody color, and pink being the offshoot of that was the male color. So if you look at Michelangelo, it's all the men are these red cloths and pink cloths even. So basically culture changes, and I think it's not that pink is a weak color, it's that pink is associated with women and thus deemed weak. And it doesn't matter what color was associated with women, the patriarchy would be oh, that's not good, And so rather than running away from it and choosing a, quote, more dignified color, blue or purple, we wanted to run straight into it of oh, you think you think women are weak and thus Pink is weak. We don't agree with that. We think women are strong. We think Pink is strong. So that was like my intentions as an artist, right? Putting it all in there. And I found that like it didn't really matter because I think the trans and people of color communities just, they felt excluded. And I realized that as an artist, I can't go around to like every single person who like buys the book or wears a hat and be like, do you understand exactly what I mean? And are you wearing it for the exact right reasons? And are you gonna write a 5-star review? I mean, like, you know, as an artist, you make something and it's out there and people make it their own. And I think the Pussyhat has become language, and I'm deeply gratified to add to that, especially as a writer. It's visual language, it's written language. I think after the march, these political cartoonists would draw pussy hats onto their cartoons. My favorite one was like Lady Liberty and Lady Justice are walking arm in arm to go march, and they have pussy hats on. And they're so clever. The Lady Justice, her hat is pulled over her eyes because Justice is blind. And it was really cool because it hit me like, oh, this is not a cartoonist friend of mine who is doing me a favor by talking about the project. Like, they're just using it as language at this point, right? To express further ideas. And to that end, like, you know, I've heard talk about people saying like, oh, don't ruin the unification of the Pussyhat. Like, why are you attacking it? It's such a good thing. Like, we need to stay united. Essentially, it boils down to like, don't protest like that. Don't, as a trans community, people of color, like, don't use the Pussyhat to express that. But I actually think it's great. I think if they feel like it just so aptly captures white feminism and they can use that symbol to be heard, even if it's like quote unquote negative, I think that's really powerful. I think like intersectionality is important, and I think we will get there, but I think it takes time and it's messy. I think especially as a woman, I feel the need to be graceful all the time in everything I do, but movements are messy, and I think, I just don't think, and also like, I just really don't want to be a hypocrite. Like, I would never tell Colin Kaepernick, like, don't protest like that, like, protest a different way. So similarly, I would not tell a trans person, like, don't tear down the Pussyhat, protest a different way. I think these ways are valid. And it brings attention to their cause, and I'm happy to be a part of it, and I'm happy that it's encouraging conversation. Recently, someone put a Pussyhat on a Harriet Tubman statue, and it caused a lot of conversation. You know, some people in the Black community felt that one of their heroes was being co-opted, and some people in the Black community felt like it was an inclusive gesture and powerful. So I think symbols are meant to be used to like further the conversation, and so I'm really proud of the Pussyhat for doing that. I had one more thought. Let me think. Well, maybe it'll come to me later.
Well, Krista, I know you will continue to further spark more conversation and movements, and we want to extend the conversation to you guys in the audience. We definitely want to hear questions to hopefully further incite dialogue. So we would love to.
I remember what I was going to say.
Oh, please.
Remember, movements are messy. So I just wanted to mention that, like, when there's disagreement amongst a community that's largely united, we agree on the same things, we agree on human rights, but we're allowed to have disagreements, even publicly. I think, you know, if Yumi and I were to have a disagreement in public, it'd be like, oh my God, Asian Americans, they just can't get it together. Why should we listen to them? They can't even like listen to each other, you know? Or women are just, catfight, you know, all this stuff. Whereas two white men if they have a public disagreement, neither of them are discredited. And the groups they represent, like, honestly, they don't even represent a group, right? But white men are not discredited when they argue. And I think it's this idea of purity that, it's another patriarchal trick, right? That we are not going to listen to you until you become perfect and speak to us in a perfect way, and you're unified in a way when we deem you unified. So just be aware, that trick is out there. Don't let it fool you.
Thank you so much, Krista.
Thanks.
If you have a question, please raise your hand. We have a mic runner.
And Yumi and I will just pick people, and I'm going to give special treatment to those of you wearing pussy hats, just saying.
Thank you very much for your project and your sharing tonight. You said you were an introvert, and I'm interested in how you're obviously a very public person also, and how that rhythm of being an introvert and calling an extroverted part of yourself to be very public, how that works internally and what you think it contributes to the whole conversation.
Thank you for that question, because I think while I am an introvert, when I was younger, I let that not just define me, but confine me. I was really fearful of going out to network. Certainly, giving a talk like this, I'd be like, oh my God,
Same here.
Yeah. But I also think that, and Yumi and I have talked about this, I think introverts, especially as women, especially as Asian American women, I think too often we're kind of told already that we're introverts and quiet, And I think an introvert actually can be really effective in public. I think, whenever I plan a party, and I think party planning has a lot to do with political organizing, the skills involved. But when I throw a party, I actually plan it for the introverted guest. Because if the introverted guest is having a good time, everyone's having a good time.
As an introverted guest who has been at Krista's parties, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And, I think introversion is so important because we get to know ourselves, kind of inhaling and exhaling, right? And I think similarly how we all have feminine and masculine in us, we all have introversion and extroversion in us. And just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you have to stick to that label. You can explore other parts of yourself. So that's what I allowed myself to do. And I took a very experimental approach to it. In my book, I talk about the science fair, that you can treat your life like a science fair, like a fourth grade one, where you just kind of have fun with it and explore something. And when I went out networking, I made it an experiment versus a life or death, oh my God, this is gonna define me for the rest of my life. So I think that's really important in general. Do you have thoughts on that? I know we talk about this a lot.
Yeah, I will quickly say that I feel like extroversion is associated with this powerful masculine quality, whereas introversion is seen as this weaker yin feminine quality.
Right, and not as effective, yeah.
Right, and I think for myself as well, it took me a really long time to embrace my introverted qualities and to really own it instead of trying to fit myself into this extroverted box where I had to wear a power tie and a navy blue suit. And ironically, as soon as I embraced my introverted nature more, it became more safe for me to also be extroverted.
Yeah, I think it's accepting yourself is so important, because I think when when I used to go out to network and I was just so uncomfortable with myself, it really created discomfort in the people around me. But when I got comfortable with myself, it was like a safe, fun space for others to join in too. And I think, and I guess what it comes down to really is that everything is figure-outable. So if you're out there and you're like, I'm so introverted, I'll never be able to go up on stage, I'll never be able to like hobnob or, I don't know, play golf and get like important business contacts. I mean, all that stuff. It's like, yeah, you can. It's actually all figure-outable. And I think, I used to think that I had to be born a certain way to be a people person. When I decided to become a Hollywood screenwriter, like my mom was like terrified for me. She was like, Krista, like Hollywood is based on like who you know. It's like a people industry, and like you're really bad with people. And she wasn't wrong, but it's figure-outable. So if someone like me who is really bad with people could figure it out, so can you, really.
Thank you. Krista, you say you went to Barnard and all-women's college too. How do you think the experience of an all-women's college helped or held you back in your plans?
That's fascinating. I think like a lot of women who attend women's colleges today, I didn't necessarily intend on going to a women's college, but I'm so glad I did. I think just having women around me and like understanding that just helping, like realizing that we needed to be leaders, and I think there's something about Barnard where I feel like, especially, and not just as a woman, but as like a daughter of immigrants, as like a small town girl in New York, I always thought like the big epic stuff was like out there, like interviews and doing important things. But there's something about college that brings like that starry sky like here. And you're like, oh, I can like touch this and manipulate it. I think honestly, like just having women in all my classes, it really like reminded me that we have voices, I think. And that sometimes there are like, so I talk a lot about the concept of the exceptional woman, and it sounds good, but it's not. It's so the idea is that patriarchy has always had a place for women, and it's called exceptional woman. It's like this one slot, and right now they put, let's say, Ivanka Trump in that slot, right? So the idea is that like when Yumi and I are struggling and we realize, oh, there's something wrong with the system, the patriarchy could be like, no, like nothing's wrong with the system. Look, Ivanka did it, so clearly you're doing something wrong. And oftentimes I would believe that, and I would push myself harder. I'm clearly not trying hard enough. And it's kind of this trick to like not see the machinations going on. And I think being surrounded by women brought me closer to realizing that. So in that sense, it was really helpful. And, it reminded me that there's not actually just one slot. That's like, bogus.
Hi, Krista. Thank you so much for your talk. I was just curious if you felt that the women's movement has kind of backsliding, because I remember the 70s and 80s, it was all dressed for success and the ties and the shoulder pads, and now you look at the women doing the weather and they look like they're ready for, pole dancing, and I'm just always shocked at how they dress, and I'm like, are we going backwards? And then also, I wanted to ask if you felt that in the election, if Hillary Clinton and the ways that she was portrayed and scrutinized, if you felt that was sexist, because it was always like, well, she doesn't have any charisma, even though she was, clearly, qualified. She just never really seemed to meet up in people's minds, So I just
Oh yeah, I mean that election affected me really deeply. I think, I actually have been thinking a lot about the word charisma. And I was talking to Aurora about it, actually. Aurora illustrated not only all the Pussyhat Project materials, but this entire book. And we were talking about how, you don't, generally women aren't described as charismatic. That's like sort of an adjective used on men. So when we say Hillary Clinton isn't charismatic, or she doesn't seem to exude power or whatever, it's because we actually don't have that image in our mind yet, right? Like, what does a powerful woman look like? Whereas, what does a powerful man look like? It's sort of like, well, he's either shirtless and muscled or he's wearing a suit and tie. We kind of had developed that visual language that we all collectively agree on. And we don't have that for women, and I think, my book, I talk about my favorite Disney movie, which is Cinderella. And I think it really illustrates something for me about feminism and patriarchy, which is the evil stepmother. So Cinderella wants to go to the ball, and every eligible maiden in the land can go. And so she asks, can I go to the ball? And then the wicked stepmother says, of course you can, if you finish all your chores and you find something suitable to wear. And I think that is patriarchy in a nutshell, right? It's like, of course you can join us as long as you do all your chores and you find something suitable to wear. And the thing is, women are a can-do type of people. So we're like, okay, yeah, we could totally do that. And Cinderella does that. She actually finishes all the chores. She gets something suitable to wear, even though, they never intended for her to go to the ball to begin with, right? They give her tons of chores. It's like a wild goose chase. There's always, a button missing or whatever. It's meant to be an impossible task. And even when she comes through with it, they literally rip her dress to shreds. So I think Hillary was caught in that same game, and so many of us are as well. It's like, well, of course you could be president if you do all the thing, get all the experience, which Trump did not, right? And if you find something suitable to wear, and everyone's like, oh, I don't know about those shoes, I don't know about her pantsuit or this color or that color, her haircut, is she really relatable, So to me, I think sometimes it's such a large issue, we have to zoom out to really see it, because when we're zoomed in to these individual instances, it's there's this creeping sense of something's not right here, but it feels almost silly to bring it up, too small. But when you realize it's happening on such a large scale, I think it gives us a little more confidence to talk about it, right? And, ripping her Cinderella's dress to shreds, I feel like women's appearances are always picked apart. It's don't be so frilly, you need to look dignified, but don't look like you don't care about life and don't look so boring, add some, or oh, you need to really show off your youth and sexiness, then people will be drawn in, but no, you need to be taken seriously, your shirt's too long, it's too short, so on. We do that all the time. And I personally I'm trying to notice when I do that at all, yeah.
I think the metaphor you use a lot, which really resonates with me, is that you don't need a 6'4" white man to loom over your shoulder and tell you this idea is stupid, you're dressed like a slut, you're not smart enough, you have too much vocal fry, et cetera, when so many people who are disenfranchised are of a social class that is not white, cisgender, heteronormative, masculine, already have that voice in their heads.
Yeah, we have that voice in our heads. We're self-policing. We don't need white men to tell us point blank, oh, you can't do that. Because we tell ourselves that, yeah? And I try to, whether it's to each other, to our children, or to ourselves, and that's why I wrote this book, actually. It's really so, the personal is political, and I really think that if we can, extract that voice from people's heads with, this is my contribution to that, like how to like learn about yourself and do these exercises to, it sounds kind of hokey, but be kind to yourself, because otherwise you're letting a patriarchal voice like commit warfare on you.
Not just warfare, but squash your next wild, brilliant idea to change the world.
Yeah, totally. I think, I tell people all the time, like, I'm really proud of the Pussyhat, but I don't think that having the idea for the Pussyhat makes me special, like, at all, because people have great ideas all the time, especially women, especially girls, and we talk ourselves out of them. We're like, oh, like, I don't have the experience for that, or I don't know if I could raise the funding for that. I don't know if my friends will like it. What if it fails? I'm going to be so embarrassed, right? And so I think if anything makes me like special, it's that I've spent the last 10 years finding ways to nurture my ideas rather than squelch them. And so this book is about nurturing those ideas because, I want everyone to make their own Pussyhat Project. And I don't mean literally like make your own craftivism project. I mean like do whatever like wild, crazy idea you have in you. It's, this book is meant to be like me that you could take home with you. And this book is, I like to say, your bad influence best friend. Yumi's mine, I'm hers. And the bad influence best friend is that person in your life who like here's an idea of yours and they're like, what? That is the best idea I've ever heard. You should totally do it. You can totally do it. Oh my God, like it's gonna be great. And it's that person who pushes you out of your comfort zone, because oftentimes we're taught to stay very small, and we need these friends in our life to like encourage us to expand, because that's our birthright. And I think until you have that bad influence best friend in your life, or until you can be that friend to yourself, I'm hoping this book can help you, because it's like what I learned in 10 years that you can do probably like in a month. So it's accelerated.
Well, I think this is all the time we have for questions. We will both be signing books outside, so let's please give a round of applause to Krista Suh for being here and sharing her wisdom.